For $15, I made myself a retro gaming plug-and-play emulation console that's probably better than most of the crap that I've reviewed on the channel that comes from Amazon, straight off the boat from China, all those little junky things. I say it time and time again. Doing it yourself can be best, but I understand not everybody's got the time for it. So today I set up my own little retro emulation build on a Raspberry Pi 02W in a quickness. And I'm going to show you real quick the build, what I did. It's not a huge, setup, but it's got like my favorites on it. And that's what mattered. Like I'm putting something together for myself. And that's one of the, the best ways to go about it. Like, tailor made for what you want. And for those of you who followed me for a long while, you might remember my channel originally was heavily focused on the Raspberry Pi, running retropie. And we did tons of videos, tutorials and whatnot, but I've been out of the loop for a while now. It's been a minute, man. And I never messed with the Raspberry Pi 02W. This thing is tiny, but it's like $15 and it's way more capable than the original like Pi Zero, the one that I used to mess with on occasion that I kind of gave up on. I was like, man, this thing struggles, but this thing surprised me a bit. So let's get into it. So real quick, I'm going to show you the build, then, the steps that it took. Like I literally did this in a quickness. So RetroPie, we got a few systems here. I'm going to go through them real quick as this is not a huge build. It's just stuff that I wanted to have access to. And I think on a little $15, board, it's kind of sweet. So we got Super Nintendo. I got 127 games listed here. I didn't want to go with the like complete library. Like who's going to play like everything? So I just put stuff that I thought I'd want to play or stuff that I know I want to play. And I did scrape the artwork, have the metadata, that kind of stuff. Most of the systems have video clips, but not all of them. I'll show you how I got the video clips in a moment and the box arts and all that stuff. But a lot of games I wanted to play on Super Nintendo, one of my favorite systems. So of course I was going to have this on here. And then we have a Sega Mega Drive or Genesis, 122 games. A nice little list, I believe. Same thing, artwork, videos for a lot of the games. But these are all going to play fine. We'll test some games out as well. I'll show you. Neo Geo, I love Neo Geo. So, of course, we had to have some Neo Geo up on here. I don't think I have video clips for these. I have to go back through and check that out. But, like, pretty much complete library of Neo Geo. And then NES, love NES, 148 games. Didn't want every single one of them because I'm not going to play them all. I might not even play all of these. But there we go, all the box arts and stuff. Actually, the box arts for NES, I scraped on the actual system here, had it set up to the internet, went to press start, went to scraper, screen scraper, and then I went to scrape now and just selected NES, and that was it, and then just ran it type of thing. So that's one way you could do it for all your systems, but you'll just get like the basic, box art and metadata type of thing. But I did want it to be a little more fancy, so I'll show you that in a minute. And then Sony PlayStation. I only have 46 games. I'm going to expand upon that, but a lot of my favorites, Pepsi Man, which I played in the beginning of the video here, and it was running off the Pi, 02W nicely. I've booted up a bunch of these games, and they all ran perfect. I was like, nice. That's what I wanted. A lot of these games I freaking absolutely love. Lunar 2, Final Fantasy Tactics, Airgates, Dragon Warrior 7, stuff like that. The Castlevania games. Nice little list, but I can definitely expand upon it. But let's go ahead and back out of there. And that was it. Like, will I add more stuff to it? I just wanted to do this fast. So let me show you all the resources I used. Now, before we jump into that, I know I said $15, and that's because that's how much the board cost. But there may be some other things that you need. Everything I needed, I already had because I just have, micro SD cards lying around, and they're cheap anyway. Power supplies, micro USB, the little HDMI, mini HDMI or whatever it is. I already have adapters for that. They do sell like kits that come with all those things, and it'll cost like a bit more than the $15, like maybe $30 or so to get it with like a case and everything. But real quick, let's go through this process. of how I got this going like fast. Just last night, I threw it together and went to bed. Then woke up today like, let me mess with this. So the first step on getting a build set up like this on your own is going to be downloading RetroPie. Depending on the Pi you have, like I'm using a Pi 20W, I downloaded that one. If you have a Pi 4 or 400, you download that one. Pi 1 or Pi 0, download that one. So from there, you're going to need to image it to a micro SD card. And that's where WinDisk Imager comes into play. That's what I've always used, never had an issue with it. So once you open up that program, it'll have where you choose the image. So I'm just going to show you real quick. So I have the image on my drive here. I'll go ahead and select it. And now it's selected on there. And then I would select the drive letter for my micro SD card that I have plugged into my PC somehow with, a micro SD card reader, obviously. Make sure you're double checking because you don't want to image this to like an external hard drive or something else, or just something that you have attached that you don't want to screw up, right? So double check that. So once you get that done, you just simply plug the micro SD card into your Pi, and it'll take a while at first because it's doing some setup type stuff. But once that's done, boom, you're ready to go. So how do you get the games on there? How do you, get the artwork? That's the easy part. Real easy, honestly. So I can't directly link you to games, but the Internet Archive, archive.org, that's where I've gotten every single game that I put on this Raspberry Pi. So you could just search for things PS1, no intro, redump, Super Nintendo ROMs, whatever, dude. Even like RetroPie BIOS for the things that actually need a BIOS. You can find the BIOS pack on here, and boom, you're good. Even RetroArch BIOS pack. Like pretty much, I know it's on here somewhere. You just got to look. But RetroPie BIOS, you'll find it. Find those BIOSes that you need, like for PS1, stuff like that. And you'll put it on the Pi. How do you get it on the Pi? So there's going to be a couple ways that you can go about transferring your ROMs to your Raspberry Pi for a setup like this. I opted to use a USB drive. So now with using a USB drive, obviously I needed to use a USB hub, as this thing just has micro USB there. I had a little Maker USB hub I used to use for Mister way back when. I'll put a link down below if you want to grab one of those or need it, but it has micro USB, so you could plug it into this. It gives you several ports, so you could use other things as well. It's an added cost, but I just had one lying around, so it worked for me. The other way is to use a file transfer program like FileZilla. Now, you would have to be connected to the internet. You put in your Wi-Fi, or if you have one of those hubs, you can get like an Ethernet USB adapter and hardwire in if you want. But you'll find your IP address on the Raspberry Pi. It does have where it says show IP. Click it, and it'll show you your IP. Take note of that. Put that into the host. Username is going to be Pi, P-I, and then password is Raspberry, all lowercase, port 22, quick connect, and then you're ready to go. On the left side is your PC, wherever your ROMs are. You'll find them. On the right side is going to be your, RetroPie build on your SD card. It should start like here, I think, where it just says Pi, click RetroPie, and then BIOS up here if you want to drag drop your BIOS there, and then ROMs here, all your different folders, drag them over there. But the USB way is just very easy. What you'll do is you'll have your USB drive plugged into your PC. I had it formatted to FAT32. I think there's another file format you can have it as. I'll figure it out, put it up on the screen, but have it formatted properly. Then make a folder called RetroPie, and that's it. Take it out of your PC, plug it into your Raspberry Pi that's powered on, give it a moment, and then pull it out. Like if the USB drive has a light indicator when it stops flashing, pull it out. Mine doesn't, so I just waited a moment. And then once you put it back into your PC, this RetroPie folder will now have these three other folders: BIOS, configs, and ROMs. So you could add your stuff there. Like your BIOS files for PlayStation 1, you would put them into the BIOS folder. And then all your ROMs, you'll put it in the appropriate folder for the game that you're adding games for. And it will create all these folders once you plugged it into the Raspberry Pi the first time. You don't have to create these folders. They'll just be there. So that's how you know it actually did the process right. Everything's there. You'll put your ROMs onto each, folder that it goes to. Now, you can scrape the metadata and the box arts the way I showed you earlier through RetroPie. But another way you could go about it, which is the way I was messing around with this build, was through scraper.net. I don't remember using this before, but I wanted to check it out. So you scroll down to the bottom and you can download it for Windows. Once you download it, you open it up. Let me go ahead and do that now. So the first time you do this, that little screen that first flashed, it may take a little while to get things set up. But every time you load it up after, it'll be instant, like it just popped up here. You'll have a bunch of configurations and whatnot, the different systems that are supported you could select through. The most important thing is the global root folder is selecting where your ROMs are so it knows what artwork to actually pull. So I selected the USB drive and the ROMs folder, and it'll put all the metadata, the game list, the artwork, and all that stuff onto that USB drive. And then once that's done, you can just pop it into the Raspberry Pi and let it transfer everything over. You can update the USB drive, add stuff, plug it back in, and it'll transfer it over so you could keep working on it over time. But let's get back to the actual build, test some games. Okay, so let's boot up a game for each system. Just make sure everything runs full speed, that kind of thing. Like Neo Geo, let's try Samurai Showdown 2. Now, realize there's tons of customizations we could do on this build. I've already minorly done a few things, but if you want me to do follow-up content, you want to follow along, learn how to do more, let me know in the comments down below. I'm going to be doing a lot more Raspberry Pi content in the future. The Pi 5, I have a build I want to take a look at. Maybe some more tutorials on different things, testing things. I don't know. Just let me know in the comments. Like, I love this. But here we go. Samurai Showdown 2, one of my all-time favorites. I remember back in the day playing this in the arcade, and there was a guy that would be there like all the time. And he knew all the secrets, all the like the weird little doll thing that you could do where you could turn to a doll. Like weird little things like that. And I remember being fascinated, just fallen in love with this game. Like I played the first one before, obviously, but man, Samurai Showdown 2, freaking love this game. But this looks great, is running great. I'm using the 8BitDo Pro 2 controller, Bluetooth, set it up, you know, through retropie, and it works great. Latency feels good, but let's move on. NES obviously is gonna run, but let's give it a shot real quick. Like, I love this game. Like I said, this build was just stuff that either I already loved or games I wanted to play. Didn't need to have everything on here. But here we go. NES runs fine. Super Nintendo? Let's give something a shot. Hagani is a game that, if you had a Super Nintendo back in the day, it's very unlikely that you've played this game. You may have discovered it later on in life like I did, because I don't know for sure if this was a Blockbuster exclusive or just like there wasn't very many of them produced. But either way, obviously, with not many being out there, limited access for people to play this game. But it's definitely worth checking out. Freaking awesome. But yeah, Super Nintendo runs great here. Sega Genesis. Let me pick something good. Oh, you know what? Screw it. Altered Beast. This game is cool. I mean, not everybody's, style of game, but I've always been kind of intrigued by this one. It's a lot of fun. I didn't have a Genesis when I was a kid, but I had a friend who had one. This is one of the first Genesis games I've played. So, it's got some nostalgia for me. But yeah, Genesis performs great on this single board computer. All right, let's wrap this video up with a little PS1. Air Gates. I always loved this freaking game, man. The little role-playing game that they have added on it, just the fighting game in general. I played this in the arcade too. It was pretty sweet, but it's really awesome. I know I always joke about PS1 running on everything, but for a board this tiny, it's freaking awesome. Like, I'm loving it. Like, yeah, we're not playing some crazy powerful systems on this thing, but it's a lot of fun. And just to show you that, hey, on the cheap, you could set up a little, emulation build, little setup fairly easily, as I hope I demonstrated today. And, you can go more powerful with a more powerful, single board computer or your PC, laptop, Android box, instead of paying for something somebody else made or, just kind of put together very sloppily. You can have some control over it. But there you go. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think. Catch you on the next one. Bye.